Tracking a wild and rare fall pattern, bringing an early blast of record-setting Arctic air to the lower 48 with strong winds, heavy snow, and even a few flakes flying across the south. Meanwhile, we've got a big wind event out west, a wind event in the east, and snowpack continuing to build in the northern hemisphere in places that will set the stage for potentially an early, fast start to winter in parts of the lower 48. We've got all of that, plus a look at the potential for a big solar storm, a supermoon, and we'll test your weather IQ coming right up in today's video. Welcome into Cold Rain's Weather World, friends. My name is Jason. I've been tracking the weather a long time and glad to be with you this morning or whenever you're watching the show. Thank you for joining me. If you haven't yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button down below. Give the content a like and certainly leave a comment. If there's anything I can be in prayer about, please put it in the comment section. Continue to pray for my son, Cold Drizzle, who had 3 teeth pulled on Monday and is recovering from that. So please keep him in your prayers. I would very much appreciate it. Thank you all for the support here on this channel. We're growing rapidly and certainly appreciate all of you for signing on and joining the team. Now, got some weather to get into today. Of course, we do as we do every day, and we're going to get into it straight away with a look at what's going on around the nation this morning. And boy, we've got the wind advisories and high wind warnings in place on both coasts and even up here in Montana as well, where we're watching a big storm system move in to the west. Maybe into the west this way. That's how we'll do it. I'm a little bit reversed here with the camera in terms of how it shows my movements in relation to the map that you're seeing. But anyway, Oregon, Nevada, Northern California, looking at some strong winds. This is pressure gradient driven winds, so we're looking at gusts into the 30s, even 40s to 50s to close to 60 in some parts of Northern California and Oregon, particularly in the higher elevations out here. So that's a gradient wind kind of thing. We've got a tight pressure gradient. You can see winds coming in. Also out in the east, got a storm system that's going to wind up bring a marginal risk of severe weather with wind with some of the thunderstorms that move through later this afternoon. And as that front pushes through, strong jet energy aloft in the lower levels of the atmosphere are going to mix down to the surface and create gusty conditions for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours later this evening. So watch out for that. And just a few special weather statements up and down the eastern seaboard. Now, if we take a look out west, here's kind of how this will all play out. We get on in toward the afternoon. Look at all of this rain just with this storm system is just bringing a ton of rain out here. You're going to see rainfall in excess of 1-2 inches of rain, particularly in the higher elevations. It's going to squeeze some of that moisture out pretty efficiently. And you can see as we go on through the day-to-day, that tight pressure gradient, these tightly packed isobars, that'll loosen up as we get on in toward tomorrow. But this afternoon, we've got quite a bit of tightly packed isobars here. That's just a strong pressure gradient, strong winds. And as that front moves on in, as we get on in toward Thursday and then into Friday afternoon, things kind of calm down and you'll get a bit of a break as that energy begins to translate to the east, and that will set the stage for a big Arctic intrusion later in the weekend and toward early next week. We're going to see a front blast out of Canada, and we're going to look at that here in just a minute. Also got your weather IQ question coming up. See if you know about thunderstorms. All right, so stay tuned for that. In the east, a little bit of a different story here. We've got a low pressure over the Great Lakes this afternoon. That is going to wind up a bit, strengthen, and look at the pressure gradient. Got a tight gradient here too. Even bring some snow up here to the White and Green Mountains, the Adirondacks. But we've got a big jet that's right off the surface of the earth that will be developing behind this low pressure as it strengthens and pulls into southern parts of Nova Scotia and on into the Avalon Peninsula, bringing you all some more rain and snow and wind up there as well. But as that moves away, plenty of rain up here in the northeast, but a strong pressure gradient will keep you guys gusty through the rest of the week up here. That'll settle down a little bit as we get on in toward the weekend and end the week. You can see kind of things relax a little bit in terms of the pressure gradient. But here comes the next system through the Great Lakes as we get through Friday. That's going to be bringing some rain, snow up into Canada, and some gusty winds behind that, but that is going to be the impetus for dragging some of that, the process of dragging some of that colder air out of Canada. So here's what the big picture view is. This is North America. Here's the US down here. Here's Canada up here. The blue, of course, is snow. Watch this. I just wanted to put this in today to show you how we're going to proceed as we go through the next couple of weeks. Look at all of these storm systems just moving in. Here's one coming into the Aleutians. Here's one out in the west coast. Here's a couple of more across Canada and the northern tier of the United States. And we'll just see these storm systems just move through the area, bringing rain and wind, particularly across the north. And then Canada, you'll just stay in the freezer up here with cool air coming out of the Arctic. More systems moving through, dropping snow, moving across the northern tier. The general storm track is going to be to the north and keep things across the northern tier after we get this big trough out of the way. But look at all those systems just kind of rotating through. It's going to be a very active pattern. That's the takeaway from this map. We're going to be dropping snowfall up in Canada and building that snowpack, which if you like winter weather, that's what you want to see. In terms of total precipitation as we go through the week for the lower 48, lion's share of the rainfall is going to be here in the northwest part of the United States, especially as you get onto the coast and get to some of those, the coastal range here into the Cascades, up into the Olympics. You're going to really squeeze that rainfall out. And of course, over here in the Northeast too, could pick up a half to 3/4 of an inch of rain with that system. And then another system kind of moves through the Great Lakes, bringing some more rain showers up here as we go through the week. And so by the time we get on in toward Friday evening, you can see through the Tennessee Valley in the deep south up into the northeast, we've had about a half an inch of rain or so for the week, maybe approaching an inch in parts of the eastern Great Lakes region, and plenty of rain out west, but you'll settle down as we get on in toward the weekend, so you might have a decent weekend out there in the northwest. There's your severe thunderstorm potential, just a marginal risk for wind, maybe a couple of hailstones out here, but that's probably unlikely. Mostly wind here in the west, wind in the east, with some of these storms on an isolated basis, but the big gradient wind, or the kind of the wind event, is scheduled to take place after the thunderstorms move through behind the cold front. You're going to get that mixing, that cold air advections coming in out of Canada, strongly mixing those winds down to the surface. And what kind of winds are we talking about? Well, out west, we're looking at wind gusts this afternoon, kind of on a widespread basis in the 50s, even approaching 60 with some of these reds out here. You can see that up into southern Oregon as well. But widespread gusts into the 30s and 40s, greens kind of getting into the 40s, and then things kind of die down a bit as we go on through Thursday. If we take a look in the east, check this out. Now this is the, I'm on the wrong display here, so let me get back to that. Sorry, let me jump back to the last map. Yeah, you can see that pretty good. Let's get on a better display though, so we can see everything here on the east. This 850 millibar jet, okay, so as that storm system winds up at the surface, we've got big wind energy coming in aloft, about a mile up off the ground. We get in here toward this evening as we approach the afternoon into the evening. Look at these browns, and start to see these dark reds and browns. Those are winds in the 50s and 60s approaching 70 miles per hour right off the surface of the earth. And look at that, as we get on into the overnight hours, we start to see big browns all over the place up here in the northeast, and it won't take much to just bring those winds down to the surface, at least in gusts. And you can see it lasts for a few hours this evening. Things kind of die down as we get on in toward tomorrow morning, so could see some gusts up into the 50s and even a couple of gusts into the 60s. That's plenty to rearrange the furniture on your deck if you have any out there. Hopefully you'll secure all of that. But as we get on in toward the evening hours this evening, look at that, the gusts just pick up and last for a couple of hours and move on through, and then things kind of die down. They'll pick back up again tomorrow as we get some heating and some more mixing, but not to the extent as we've seen today, or we'll see as that cold front moves through. And as I said, things kind of die down as we get toward the end of the week. So there you have it, folks. We're going to take a look at the big trough now that's coming in next week and see what that looks like and where it might bring snow, heavy wind, well, heavy snow, wind, and maybe even a few flakes in places that don't typically see snow this time of year. We'll take a look right now, but first I've got your weather IQ question coming up. All right, as I said, today's weather IQ question is about thunderstorms, and here it is. In a high precipitation thunderstorm, what color, generally speaking, is lightning? Blue or purple, yellow, white, or red? If you know the answer, type it in the comments. If you don't, just wait till the end of the show and I'll let you know what and why. And by the way, I've got timestamps for all of these sections in the video, so feel free to take advantage of those and skip to the place that you need to get to urgently, and then come back and watch the rest of the show later. But right now, we're going to take a look at that big Arctic blast coming for much of the east next week. All right, this is the big weather story of the day, the one everybody's talking about. I'm going to talk about it, of course, and this is still several days away, so I would expect to see some changes, as you would expect to see some changes. If you've been following the weather for any length of time, you know 5-day, 6-day, 7-day forecasts are often fraught with quite a bit of error. However, that said, setting the stage here, most models agree that we're going to see a highly anomalous trough in the eastern US by the time we get into early next week. And I'm talking about very, very, very anomalous. This is a very strong trough for this kind of time of year. And this kind of a trough brings dynamic weather and very cool weather and chilly temperatures. And that's what we're going to see as we get on in toward the end of the weekend into early next week. And it'll be a pretty quick hitter, so we're not looking for this to lock in and keep us in the deep freeze for any length of time. But some places are going to see freezing temperatures that haven't really seen those yet. Florida, you could set some records with the cold coming your way. Here is that trough as we get on in towards Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon. Look at these greens start to show up here and watch what happens. Oh, purples come into play as we get on in toward Monday morning, and even some magenta or plum or whatever you want to call that. Look at this. This is kind of getting down here to the end of the scale. We're talking 5 standard deviations away from normal. That is significant. And there is the trough as we get on in toward Monday evening. A front will precede this at the surface. When we're looking at these troughs, we're looking a few miles up off the ground to give us an idea of how deep the trough is and how dynamic it could be and what it could bring. But at the surface, we see it as a front. It comes through clouds, rain potentially, and then very windy behind that front when you get one of these big fronts that come through. And then it rolls on through, begins to continue to progress and gets out of the hair of everybody by the time we get on in toward Wednesday, Thursday. It's starting to roll out of the picture, and we'll just advance this along. It's kind of slow moving out. There we go. It's not slow moving out. It's going to be slow moving out on my computer for some reason. But there we go. And then we start to see some oranges build back in, and that tells you that we're going to warm up. But here's a close view of that. Look at that. Centered down here over Georgia in terms of the anomaly, but that is a deep trough, and then it moves on to the east. But that is going to bring some cool temperatures. And look at this. So we're going to have snow in the picture with this, folks, as it kind of comes in. Here it comes Monday. As we get into the overnight hours, Sunday night into Monday morning. Monday, that front comes through. And look what happens by the time we get on in toward 2 p.m. on Monday. We're looking at the European model printing out snow in Kentucky and Ohio. My friend in Kentucky, you tell me now. I've talked about Kentucky twice in one day, and I want to be careful to do that because you're not necessarily, I just say the Tennessee Valley to kind of give you an idea of the region, but definitely I want to call out some of these states: Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, even North Georgia. The European would have us believe that flakes will be flying. And then look at this. You get a skip here in the foothills where cold rain lives, as always. But then you get a little bit of a reformation back toward the Piedmont of North Carolina, out here in Virginia too, and then eventually everything kind of moves out. A few mood flakes could be flying as we get into Monday evening and Monday early overnight out here in the coastal plain, the eastern Piedmont of North Carolina, out into the western Piedmont too, rather. So look for that. You know, we're not going to predict that just yet. I still have a feeling that things might be a bit overdone and that the European model might be a little bit overzealous in doing that, but it's fun to watch and it wouldn't be a big deal the way it looks now. Anyway, if that trough were to take much more of a negative tilt, we could be looking at a big-time storm and a big-time winter storm for parts of the East Coast, but it doesn't look like it's going to be the case this time. It looks like it's going to be progressive and get on out of here. If we take a look here at the 850 millibar temperature map, this is about a mile off the surface. This gives you a good idea of where the cold front actually is, and you can kind of see it better here. Look at this blasting through. Here we are Sunday afternoon, starting to get some of those 850s getting cold here in the southeast. That front will be pushing through the day on Sunday and Monday. Apex of the cool weather will be Monday and Tuesday in the southeast, and then it kind of pushes out. So you're going to get some wind with that as well. Here comes the wind. Watch this. It's starting to move out of the plains, and you can kind of see the progression of everything as it sort of moves out of the plains, heads south. And Sunday, we get behind that front, and we start to see those big northwesterly winds kind of push in Sunday evening into Monday, and that just continues. That cold air advection continues all the way in through Tuesday, and things will start to die down. So it's going to be a windy day as we get on into Sunday, then into Monday as well, and things will settle down Tuesday. What about snowfall? Well, look at this. We're going out through the week. I've started this on Wednesday today. As we get on out through the end of the week, we'll see a few snow showers and a little bit of light snow up here in the higher terrain up in the northeast. We'll also see some in the Rockies and the Cascades as well. Could see a foot of snow out here in the Cascades. We're lucky. And then as we go on through Friday, Saturday, not much else happens. A little bit more snow picked up here in the Rockies. But watch what happens as we get on into Saturday, Sunday. Here comes that system diving out. It will strengthen, and boy, look at those winds turn around in the lakes, and look at the lake effect snow machine just start cranking out the snow. We'll see more snow up here across the border and getting into some of the mountains up here in the northeast. But look at this. We could see quite a bit of snow in the lee of the lakes. They're very, very warm, and we're going to have some very cold air coming across those lakes. And so look for the potential of snow up in the Ohio Valley, back into the southern Appalachians. Even some of the higher elevations down here could pick up a few inches of snow before all is said and done. But up here in the Great Lakes, we could see some really heavy snowfall amounts just in the lee of those lakes pretty quickly. Probably will not stay around a long time. It is still fall, the sun angle is still high, and all of that. And here is finally the last image I wanted to show you here as it relates to this. As we go on in time, got your big block up here in Greenland. We talked about this yesterday, so I won't spend a lot of time. Big ridge going up, that helps this trough really deepen in the east. And over time, that will pull out. We get more ridging across the center portion of the country, bringing warm air back in here. Another storm system moving into the west as we get into next week, next Friday. But we still see ridging up here and blocking across the north. This could be a good signal as we head into winter. We're wanting to see, the atmosphere is wanting to block up here. If it does that, going to be able to more easily send cool air into the United States and pound that stratospheric vortex as well. And that just sort of hangs on through the run, although down here in the United States, we're seeing a bit of troughing signal across the west in the run and ridging out in the east. That'll warm us up out here, of course, but this blocking is pretty good news. But we'll continue to see an active pattern for the next couple of weeks. Taking a look here at the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, November the 12th through the 18th, much above for most of the nation save the coast, and then Alaska and Hawaii above. That is big ridging in the center of the country. It'll keep us dry in the east, but storm systems moving in out west. We'll get maybe a couple of them to move into the desert southwest too and bring some rainfall out there. Kind of mixed bag here in Hawaii, with the southern areas being above normal, the northern areas being near normal, and of course, that's Alaska. Why did I say Hawaii? There is Hawaii down here. And of course, it is above as well. And that is that for the big trough. Now we're going to take a look at space weather, because we've got some action happening in the sun, and it's kind of vigorous. All right, we've got quite a bit of action going on with the sun. We've had 2 X-class solar flares yesterday and 1 approaching X-class today. These are very quick. You can see the spikes here. They're not lingering up in the X range or M range too long and kind of tapering off. Instead, they're just up and down, which is good news. Not having time to produce a big coronal mass ejection, but it's coming from all this bright stuff over here. That is sunspot activity. We've got a big sunspot cluster coming in. It's very complex. We've got a coronal hole here too. You see that black spot? That is a coronal hole. And then on our corona graph, you can see things blowing off. And as you get kind of a circle with some of these, when they blow off all to one side, that's kind of away from the Earth. But when you get a circle, that means some of it's coming toward Earth. And you can see right here at the very end, look at that, you start to see a circle. There's going to be some energy and plasma coming off the sun that's headed in our direction. It's going to put us in solar storm conditions at some point here over the next few days. Here's the disk with sunspots on it. This is the big sunspot we're watching that is still on the left limb, and it's rotating toward us. It's very complex here. You can see blues and reds. These are positive and negative charges. They're all mixed together. That is increasing the potential for a big solar flare, and we've seen big solar flares, and we could see a CME come off as a result of that. Aurora viewing today, not so great, but as we get in the next couple of days, we're going to see this really pick up and have a much higher chance of seeing the northern lights. So if it's clear and you're up to the north, particularly above this red line from Maine over to South Dakota into the Pacific Northwest, look north. You might catch a glimpse of those northern lights. And don't forget to look up tonight to catch that beaver moon. This is the brightest supermoon, full moon, when the moon is closest to the Earth in its orbit. It's called a perigee. It's called a supermoon, and it is very bright. It's the brightest one of 2025. We are at a full moon for all intents and purposes, and the next new moon is November the 20th. And that is the show for today, folks. Got to get you the answer to the weather IQ question that we asked before. And here it is. In a high precipitation thunderstorm, what color is lightning, generally speaking? And the answer is blue or purple. The water droplets and ice crystals scatter the light and kind of weed out the white and the yellow colors and leaves you with blue or purple. A lot of times, the ice crystals change the color to something else when you have large hail present. We're going to take a look at that question maybe the next time. So be prepared for that. That is the show for today. I've had an enjoyable time delivering it to you. I hope you've learned a few things and enjoyed it yourself. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Tune back in tomorrow. I'll have another video out. In the meantime, take care. Have a great day and God bless.